The sun was blazing that afternoon, the kind of heat that makes you feel like you're melting into the world around you. Jessica's skin glistened under the sunlight as she lounged in the front of the boat, her arms stretched out along the sides, head tilted back like she owned the lake. I couldn't help but smirk as I jerked the motor, steering the boat straight into a wave. The water slapped hard against the hull, and a spray shot up, drenching her. She sat up fast, pushing her sunglasses down her nose just enough to glare at me over the rims, sticking her tongue out like a kid. I just grinned back, knowing I'd gotten under her skin, literally and figuratively. Jessica and I were cousins, born just a few months apart. Our families were close, but we lived states away from each other, so every summer we'd all meet up at this lake house in Michigan. It was our thing, 2 weeks of pure freedom. We'd been coming here since we were kids, building sandcastles, climbing trees, and pulling stupid pranks on each other, like putting gum in each other's hair. But as we got older, those summers took on a different vibe. Once we were old enough to handle the boats, Jess and I would pack lunches, grab a cooler, and take off to one of the little islands scattered across the lake. We called them our adventures. It was our way of escaping the chaos of the family and just being us. That day, we'd been cruising the lake for about an hour. The sun was relentless, but the breeze kept it bearable. Jess was sprawled out, soaking up the rays, while I steered, pointing out spots where we could dock. I finally picked an island with a small, sandy beach surrounded by tall pines and oaks. The trees broke the wind, leaving the water calm and perfect for swimming. I cut the engine, pulled it up, and hopped out to tie the boat to a tree. Jess was already wading through the shallow water, her swimsuit riding up in the back. She reached behind her, adjusting it with a quick tug, then ran her fingers through her sun-bleached hair like it was some kind of movie moment. She turned to me, squinting against the sun. "You gonna swim, or just stand there looking stupid?" she called out, her voice teasing. I yanked my shirt off, slapped her butt as I passed her, and splashed into the water. "Damn it, Mike," she shrieked, chasing after me. I let her catch up, and she jumped on my back, her legs wrapping around my waist, her arms locking around my shoulders. Her skin was warm, still slick with sunscreen, and she smelled like coconut and summer. We stumbled into the deeper water, laughing until she pushed off and swam away. "That hurt, you jerk," she said, splashing me. "Sorry," I lied, grinning. I wasn't sorry, not even a little. "Yeah, sure you are," she rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide her smile. We swam out to where the water was up to our necks, and she flipped onto her back, floating effortlessly. Her blue swimsuit clung to her curves, and I couldn't help but notice how the sunlight caught the water droplets on her skin. "You look like a mermaid," I said, treading water beside her. "A mermaid with melons, right?" She shot back, flipping over to face me, her grin wide and mischievous. Obviously, I laughed. She cupped her melons playfully, raising an eyebrow at me. "So, you think they're nice?" she asked, her tone dripping with that familiar teasing edge. Jess had always been like this, flirty, bold, and totally unapologetic. And yeah, I played along. It was our thing. "Yeah, Jess, you've got nice melons," I said, laughing as she splashed me again. "God, you're such an idiot," she said, shaking her head but still smiling. "I can't believe we're related." "Hey, you asked." I shrugged. "I'm just keeping it real." She groaned, dunking herself underwater and swimming away. I stayed where I was, floating lazily, until I felt her grab my ankle from below. I kicked free, but she came up laughing, her hair plastered to her face. Before I could react, she lunged at me, trying to dunk me. I fended her off, but in the struggle, my hand caught her swimsuit strap, pulling it down her shoulder. She yelped, and I took the opportunity to push her under, laughing as she came up sputtering. But Jess wasn't one to back down. She came at me again, and this time, her hand slipped under the waistband of my swim trunks, yanking them down before I could stop her. I reached for them, but it was too late. She surfaced, holding my trunks in one hand and grinning like she just won the lottery. And there I was, standing in the water, completely exposed. "Well, well," she said, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Look what I found." "Real mature, Jess," I said, trying to sound annoyed but failing miserably. She just laughed, holding my trunks out of reach as I swam toward her. No, Emily started climbing up the sandbar, waving my swim trunks in the air like some kind of trophy, trying to lure me out of the water. "Come on," she teased, that mischievous grin spreading across her face. "I showed you mine. Now it's your turn to show me yours." I froze, the water barely reaching my hips. "Seriously?" I groaned, half laughing, half mortified. "Who's being crude now?" "Fair's fair," she shot back, pretending to be offended. She was fully on the sandbar now, my trunks dangling from her finger. I was trapped. I stood up and started walking toward her, the water dripping off me, my body betraying me with every step. Emily's eyes dropped, and her grin widened as she tossed my trunks onto the sand. I grabbed them and yanked them on, hoping she wouldn't notice the obvious situation happening downstairs. "Something tells me you got the better end of the steal," I muttered, plopping down on the sand, trying to play it cool. Emily sat across from me, reaching for the sunscreen. She started slathering it on her legs, her golden hair falling into her face as she worked the lotion into her skin. "Was there something wrong with what I showed you?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake innocence as she rubbed the lotion across her chest. "No," I admitted, my voice cracking a little. "I enjoyed it, actually." "I could tell," she said, her head snapping up, that sly smile spreading even wider. She put the lotion down and made a quick move toward me, her hand brushing against my shorts. I swatted her away, my face burning. "What are you doing?" I asked, half laughing, half panicking. She just shrugged, still smiling, and leaned back into the sun. Her wet swimsuit clung to her, leaving very little to the imagination. "They're bigger than the last time you saw them, though," I said, trying to lighten the mood. "So are you," she shot back, her voice low and teasing. She stretched out her legs slightly apart, and I couldn't help but notice the way her swimsuit bottom hugged her. "How would you even know, though?" "Back when we played doctor, all you did was touch them," she said, giggling. "Yeah, well, you just looked," I replied, my face heating up even more. We'd played that game a lot when we were kids, curiosity getting the better of us. I'd always been fascinated by her, by the warmth and softness of her. But that was years ago, and we hadn't talked about it since. The memory alone was enough to make things complicated. "I think I got the better deal back then, too," she said, turning toward me. We both laughed, but there was something in her eyes that made my stomach flip. "Have you ever seen, real melons before?" she asked, her tone casual, like she was asking about the weather. I stammered, caught off guard. "Have you ever seen a real cucumber before?" I shot back, my voice cracking. She sat up, her blue eyes locking onto mine. "No," she said, matter-of-factly. "Not an adult one." Her gaze dropped, and she reached for me again. This time, I didn't stop her. Her hand slid up the leg of my shorts, her fingers brushing against me. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. "You haven't seen melons before, have you?" she asked, her voice soft. I shook my head, unable to look away from her. She reached up with her other hand and slid her swimsuit straps down, revealing herself to me. Her melons were perfect, round, firm, and pink, that stood taut in the warm air. I reached out, my fingers trembling as I traced the curve of her melons, cupping it gently. Her hand moved lower, her fingers brushing against me, and I let out a shaky breath. "I want to see it," she whispered, her voice low and husky. Her hands went to the waistband of my shorts, and this time I didn't resist. I lifted my hips, letting her pull them down. My body reacted instantly, and I felt a surge of excitement I'd never experienced before. Emily's eyes widened as she stared at me, her lips parting slightly. "Do you know? Touch yourself," she asked, her eyes still glued to me. "What?" I choked out, completely caught off guard. You know, she said, her voice teasing. Do you massage your tool? She licked her lips, and I felt my face burn. No, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Do you? She nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of her swimsuit bottoms. Sometimes I think about us back when we were kids. Your hand under my panties, touching me. It felt so good. I started doing it to myself, imagining it was you. Her hand slid lower, and she let out a soft moan. Do you want to see me? All of me? I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. Emily leaned back, sliding her swimsuit bottoms down her legs. My breath hitched as I took her in, her soft, pink lips, the blonde curls between her legs. She raised her hips slightly, and I reached out, my fingers trembling as I touched her. Her hand found me again, her fingers wrapping around me, and I let out a shaky breath. The rest was those crunchy sounds that all men love. The way her body moved against mine, the way she tightened around me. It was overwhelming, intense, and unlike anything I'd ever felt before. When it was over, we collapsed into the sand, both of us breathless and spent. Emily got to her feet first, the same catty grin on her face. You hungry? She asked, walking toward the boat like nothing had happened, her swimsuit still lying in the sand. The summer after I turned 18 was one of those hazy, golden seasons that seemed to stretch forever. My mother and her sister, Aunt Linda, had always been close, so our families spent holidays and summers together like clockwork. This year, like so many before, we found ourselves at the old family cabin nestled deep in the woods of upstate New York. The cabin was a relic of the 1970s, with its creaky wooden floors, mismatched furniture, and a faint smell of pine that clung to the walls. It was a place where time slowed down, where the outside world felt distant, and where secrets had a way of surfacing. My cousins, Aaron and Laura, were there, as was my sister Megan. We'd grown up together, spending countless summers running through the woods, swimming in the lake, and staying up late telling ghost stories by the fire. But this summer felt different. Maybe it was because we were older, or maybe it was the way the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows that seemed to whisper of change. Whatever it was, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting between us. Over the years, I'd noticed how my cousins and sister had changed. They weren't just the girls I'd grown up with anymore. They were women, each with their own allure. I tried to be discreet about it, but sometimes I couldn't help but steal a glance, especially at Laura. There was something about her, the way she moved, the way she smiled, that drew me in, even though I knew it was wrong to feel that way about family. One of our traditions was camping by the lake, a short hike through the woods from the cabin. This year, as we packed our gear and headed into the trees, I found myself lagging behind, carrying the heaviest bag. The path was narrow, and the air was thick with the scent of earth and leaves. Laura was walking just ahead of me, her long hair swaying with each step. I couldn't help but glance at her occasionally, though I tried to be subtle. Few times she caught me, turning her head just enough to meet my eyes before smiling and looking away. It was a small thing, but it made my heart race. When we reached the campsite, Aaron and Megan went off to gather firewood, leaving Laura and me to set up the tents. The sun was high in the sky, casting dappled light over the clearing. As we worked, Laura teased me about catching me staring at her earlier. You know, if you're going to look, you could at least try to be sneaky about it, she said, her tone playful, but with an edge that made me blush. I stammered something about it being an accident, but she just laughed. Relax, I'm just messing with you. Besides, it's kind of flattering. Her words caught me off guard, and I didn't know how to respond. She didn't seem to mind my awkwardness, though, and we fell into an easy rhythm as we finished setting up the tents. Once the tents were up, Laura suggested we go swimming while the others were still away. The lake was just a short walk from the campsite, its surface glistening in the afternoon sun. We stripped down to our underwear, the cool water a welcome relief from the summer heat. Laura didn't make it awkward, even when she noticed me looking at her. She seemed comfortable in her own skin, and her confidence was both intimidating and intoxicating. Aaron and Megan eventually joined us, and we spent the afternoon splashing around and laughing like we were kids again. But there was an undercurrent of something else, something unspoken that lingered in the air. It was in the way Aaron and Megan exchanged glances, the way Laura's eyes lingered on me a little too long, the way the sunlight seemed to highlight every curve and contour of their bodies. That night after dinner, we sat around the campfire, passing around a bottle of wine coolers that Aaron had smuggled in. The fire crackled and popped, casting flickering shadows on our faces. The conversation turned to memories of past summers, and for a while, it felt like nothing had changed. But then, Aaron made a comment about how we were all grown up now, and the mood shifted. "It's weird, isn't it?" Megan said, staring into the fire. "We're not kids anymore. Things are different." No one said anything for a long moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Finally, Laura broke the silence. "Different doesn't have to be a bad thing," she said, her voice soft, but with a hint of something I couldn't quite place. I went to bed early that night, my head spinning from the wine coolers and the tension that had been building all day. But sleep didn't come easily. I was still awake when Laura slipped into the tent and lay down beside me. We lay there in the dark, the sound of the forest outside the tent filling the silence. Then Laura spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You know, Aaron and Megan made out earlier." I turned to look at her, my heart pounding. "What?" She laughed softly. "Yeah, I saw them. They think no one noticed, but I did. And you know what else? Aaron's into girls. She told me a while ago." I was stunned. Aaron had always been so confident, so sure of herself, but I'd never imagined this. Laura seemed unfazed by my reaction, though. She went on to tell me that she and Aaron had experimented before, back when they were younger. Her words left me speechless, my mind racing with questions I didn't know how to ask. Laura turned to face me, her eyes glinting in the faint light filtering through the tent. "Don't look so shocked," she said, her tone teasing. "It's not that big of a deal. People do things. They figure stuff out. That's what life's about, right?" I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. She smiled, then reached out and brushed a strand of hair from my face. "You're cute when you're flustered," she said before rolling over and falling asleep. I lay there for what felt like hours, my mind spinning. The summer had just begun, but already nothing felt the same. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping and the faint rustle of leaves outside the tent. Laura was still asleep beside me, her breathing soft and steady. For a moment, I just lay there, watching her, the events of the previous night replaying in my mind. Her revelations about Aaron and Megan, the way she'd teased me, it all felt like a dream, but the warmth of her body next to mine was undeniably real. I slipped out of the tent quietly, not wanting to wake her. The campsite was bathed in the golden light of early morning, the air crisp and fresh. Aaron and Megan were already up, sitting by the smoldering remains of the campfire. They looked up as I approached, their expressions unreadable. "Morning," Megan said, her tone casual, but with a hint of something else, curiosity, maybe, or suspicion. "Sleep well?" I nodded, trying to act normal, but I could feel my cheeks burning. "Yeah, it was fine." "You?" She shrugged, her eyes flicking toward the tent where Laura was still sleeping. "It was interesting." Aaron smirked, her sharp eyes studying me. "Interesting how?" she asked, her voice dripping with playful sarcasm. Before I could answer, Laura emerged from the tent, stretching lazily like a cat in the sun. "Morning, everyone," she said, her voice cheerful, but with a knowing edge. "What's for breakfast?" As we ate, Aaron suggested we stay another night at the campsite. "The weather's perfect, and we've got enough supplies," she said, her tone casual, but with a glint in her eye that made me wonder if there was more to her suggestion. Megan agreed, though she shot me a look that made my stomach twist. "We'll need more food," "Oh," she said, "why don't you and I go back to the cabin and grab some stuff?" I nodded, though I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about supplies. As we packed up the empty cooler and headed back toward the cabin, Megan was quiet, her brow furrowed like she was deep in thought. About halfway to the cabin, Megan stopped walking and turned to face me. "So," she said, her voice low but steady, "what's going on with you and Laura?" I froze, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" She crossed her arms, her gaze piercing. "Don't play dumb. I heard you two talking last night. And I saw the way you were looking at her by the lake." I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just stood there, feeling exposed and vulnerable. Megan sighed, her expression softening. "Look, I'm not judging you, okay? I get it. Things are complicated, but you need to be careful. Laura's not exactly subtle, and Erin's got her own stuff going on." I blinked, surprised by her understanding. "What do you mean, Erin's got her own stuff?" Megan hesitated, then looked away. "Erin and we've been close for a while. Closer than you might think." Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. "You mean?" She nodded, her cheeks flushing. "Yeah, it's not something we talk about, but it's there. And Laura knows. She's always known." I didn't know what to say. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. Megan reached out and squeezed my arm. "Just be careful, okay? Things are changing, and I don't want anyone to get hurt." When we got back to the campsite, Erin and Laura were by the lake. They were sitting close together, their heads bent in conversation. As we approached, they looked up, their expressions unreadable. "Hey," Erin said, her voice casual but with a hint of tension. "What took you so long?" Megan shrugged, setting down the cooler. "We got distracted. You know how it is." Laura stood up, brushing sand off her legs. "Well, now that you're here, let's make the most of the day. Who's up for a swim?" We spent the afternoon by the lake, the tension from earlier slowly fading as we laughed and splashed in the water. But beneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of something else, something unspoken but undeniable. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Erin and Laura disappeared into the woods, saying they were going to gather more firewood. Megan and I stayed behind, sitting by the campfire in silence. After a while, Megan turned to me, her expression serious. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "About Erin and me." I nodded, my heart pounding. "Okay." She took a deep breath, then began to explain. She told me about the bond she and Erin shared, the way their relationship had evolved over the years. It wasn't just physical, she said. It was emotional, a deep connection that went beyond words. "I know it's complicated," she said, her eyes searching mine, "but it's real. And I think you and Laura might have something real too." I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning, trying to process everything. Megan reached out and took my hand, her touch warm and reassuring. "It's okay to feel things," she said softly. "Even if it's confusing, even if it's scary." Before I could respond, she leaned in and kissed me. It was soft and tentative at first, but then it deepened, the world around us fading away. For a moment, it was just the two of us, the crackling fire and the sound of our breathing. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless, my heart racing. Megan smiled, her eyes shining with something I couldn't quite name. "See," she said, "not so scary, is it?" I laughed, though it came out more like a nervous giggle. "I guess not." Just then, Erin and Laura returned, their arms full of firewood. They took one look at us and smirked, their expressions knowing. "Looks like we missed something," Erin said, her tone teasing. Laura walked over to me, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Well, she said, her voice low and playful. "Looks like someone's been busy." I felt my cheeks burn, but Laura just laughed and leaned in close. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I'm not jealous, but just so you know you're mine." Her words sent a shiver down my spine, but before I could respond, she pulled away and joined Aaron by the fire. Megan squeezed my hand, her smile reassuring. By the end of the week, things had shifted between us in ways I couldn't fully understand. The boundaries that had once defined our relationships had blurred, leaving us in uncharted territory. But there was a sense of freedom in it, too, a feeling that we were finally being honest with ourselves and each other. As we packed up the campsite and headed back to the cabin, I couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation. The summer wasn't over yet, and I had a feeling that the best was still to come. The last night at the cabin was warm, the air thick with the scent of pine and the faint hum of cicadas. We sat around the campfire, the flames casting flickering shadows on our faces. The wine coolers were gone, replaced by a bottle of whiskey Aaron had found in the cabin. We passed it around, the liquid burning its way down my throat, loosening my inhibitions and heightening the tension that had been simmering all week. Laura sat close to me, her knee brushing against mine every time she shifted. Aaron and Megan were on the other side of the fire, their heads bent together in quiet conversation. The atmosphere was charged, the unspoken things between us finally rising to the surface. At some point, Laura stood up and held out her hand to me. "Come on," she said, her voice soft but insistent. "Let's go for a swim." I hesitated, glancing at Aaron and Megan, but they didn't seem to notice. Laura's hand was warm in mine as she pulled me to my feet and led me down to the lake. The moon hung low in the sky, its reflection shimmering on the water like liquid silver. We stripped down to our underwear, the cool night air raising goosebumps on my skin. Laura waded in first, her movements graceful and unhurried. I followed, the water closing around me like a second skin. When I reached her, she turned to face me, her eyes dark and unreadable in the moonlight. "Do you ever feel like this summer is different?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, my throat tight. "Yeah, it feels like everything's changing." She stepped closer, her body inches from mine. "Maybe it's not a bad thing," she said, her breath warm against my cheek. "Maybe it's just us figuring out who we are." Before I could respond, she closed the distance between us, her lips meeting mine in a kiss that was soft at first, but quickly deepened. Her hand slid around my waist, pulling me closer, and I let myself get lost in the moment, the world narrowing to just the two of us. When we finally pulled apart, I was breathless, my heart pounding in my chest. Laura smiled, her eyes shining with something I couldn't quite name. "I've wanted to do that for a long time," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. I laughed, though it came out more like a nervous exhale. "Me too," she reached up and brushed a strand of hair from my face, her touch gentle. "You know this doesn't have to mean anything," she said, "or it can mean everything. It's up to us." I nodded, my mind racing. "I think it means something." She smiled, then leaned in and kissed me again, this time slower, more deliberate. The water lapped at our legs, the night wrapping around us like a blanket. For the first time all summer, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. The next morning, we packed up the campsite in silence, the weight of what had happened hanging in the air. Aaron and Megan exchanged knowing glances but didn't say anything, their own secrets binding them in a way that felt both comforting and strange. As we loaded the car, Laura slipped her hand into mine, her touch grounding me. "This doesn't have to end here," she said, her voice soft but firm. "We can figure it out. Together." I nodded, squeezing her hand. "Yeah, together." The drive back to the cabin was quiet, the hum of the engine filling the silence. I stared out the window, the trees blurring together as we sped down the dirt road. The summer wasn't over yet, and I had a feeling that the best was still to come. As we pulled into the driveway, Laura leaned over and kissed me, her lips warm and familiar. "Welcome home," she whispered, her smile lighting up her face. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was. That's all for today's stories. If you liked this video, please subscribe the channel, like the video, and comment your favorite parts. If you want any of your stories to be featured on the channel, Feel free to send your story in the provided email. Thank you.